Well, hello. Welcome to the contributors track of March's community session. If you were here last week, we celebrated a lot of things. And if you missed out, then no worries. I'm going to give you another preview today. But first of all, we have an amazing lineup today. We have a special guest, a Backstage contributor who was nominated by someone in the community. And we are going to chat with the person in some time. We have 3 demos lined up. We have Phil demoing how you can preview Scaffolder Template UI forms. We have Julio, and who's going to demo a new plugin called Periskop. And we have Taras and the Frontside team, and they're going to demo their Ingestion Integration Test Suite. But first of all, last week, 16th of March, the project completed its second birthday. And in that celebration, we talked to a few contributors and the maintainers of the project and just had some conversation. So here's a video with that clip. I'm going to make sure I hit share sound. As you know, I'm great with enjoying music on my own. But if not, then let me know. Is on. All right.
Happy birthday, Backstage. Okay.
Wait, do it. Happy birthday, Backstage.
My journey with Backstage started a year ago when I joined an awesome company called Rody, which works for unhosted solution based on Backstage.
We've adopted Backstage as part of our initiative to reduce friction for our developers on their development journey. My team regularly contributes to Backstage, and they've been the ones to encourage me to do so since I started my internship.
I started looking for a project on which I can both learn and contribute back. And Backstage appeared to be the perfect project for me.
What's not to like about the community?
One of the better things that I like about the community, let's say, is the fact that people are just willing to get involved, get stuck in and pick up tickets, like reading through good first issues and stuff like that.
From my experience, I found the Backstage community to be very welcoming and supportive of new developers. It's also very large and diverse.
I love the fact that the community is also really proactive. The one that always springs to mind, because I think it was one of the earliest examples, was we put a ticket out for dark mode for Backstage. And we included some screenshots and a few bits and pieces. And within minutes of it being out there, someone had assigned it to themselves. And within a day, we had dark mode in the project.
I am working on contributing a way to visualize metrics for tech docs.
I've implemented AWS S3 as a tech docs external storage to store and recall and read generated documentation sites from S3 buckets.
Recently, I've developed Tech Insights plugin for its front-end part, which is something I'm very proud of.
I think contributions everywhere help.
We don't have kind of resources to test all that stuff, so helping us out testing things that maybe people from the community contributed, maybe stuff that we've contributed, is a massive help for us.
There's the small contribution, which is a typo fix, a small bug fix that's really clear. Those are really nice to get because they're so easy to review.
It would be great to get more contributions in terms of design. From a very technical background, doing a lot of infrastructure projects, so design is usually not something that I think of every day, but it's so pleasing to see like a well-functioning and easy to understand UI.
The big contributions are great as well, that introduce new features and new ideas into the project. They're a lot harder. They challenge us more.
It might be a bit frightening when you think about a bunch of people looking at your code, and giving you comments and discussing it, or being part of like big discussions and decisions. But when you think about it, where else in the world would you get a chance to be part of big decisions? Where else in the world would you have a chance to have that many people look at your code, hear you out, and help you out?
The amount of people that have kind of got involved from day one and trying to help build this product really solidifies kind of the concept that Backstage is trying to solve, or the problem it's trying to solve.
Happy birthday, Backstage. The past 2 years have been amazing. Let's see what the next year can bring.
All right. So that was just a small part of the entire community that exists around Backstage. And it's one of the reasons why Backstage got into CNCF incubation stage as well. If you haven't heard about it, that's a big thing for the project. I'm going to paste a link to the blog post from CNCF where you can read more details about this. But this is a great thing and something that a lot of people have been working towards. We had a lot of news last week. So last one, I promise, is that Backstage 1.0 was released. So check out this blog post from Francesco and detailing what this is and how it would impact your Backstage instance and what this means for the project. That's all, I promise, news-wise. But let's move on to some of my favorite stuff. So today I have, as I said, a special guest with me, and I'm going to share a slide just for some suspense. So share. All right. So on backstage.io/nominate, you can nominate a community member whom you think has been contributing to the project or helping the community a lot, and we're going to spotlight them. So for today, our spotlight is Djamaile. You might remember him from his Discord username, Red. So Djamaile, are you around?
Yes, I'm here.
Let me put you on Spotlight, pun intended. No, how do I pin to first screen? Cool, you're here. So Djamaile, tell us a bit about yourself and what brought you to Backstage.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first off, let me apologize for not enabling my camera because, like I said, I'm recovering from chickenpox, so my face is all messed up. But to talk about myself, I'm from The Hague, Netherlands, working for bol.com. And yeah, what brought me to Backstage? Well, almost something more than 2 years ago, I was interning for bol.com. And somehow I was tagged in this email thread with a guy called Roy that was talking to Spotify engineers about Backstage. So I was like, okay, what is this Backstage thing, right? Is it about music or something? And then I found out it was like a whole developer experience portal. So I was very interested from that point on. Then I started full-time for bol.com. I first joined the Insights team, which is like responsible for logging, monitoring, and the alerting stack of bol.com. And that is a lot of system engineering, Kubernetes, GKA, and all that stuff. And I wanted to program a bit more. So with another engineer called Timo, we actually started working with developer experience portals, like comparing them to each other, how they integrate with GKA. So we tested out Backstage, but also Clutch from Lyft. And obviously Backstage was the better one. So that was cool. And then I went on with my life. Then around 7 months ago, there was a spot open on the developer experience team at bol.com. And I was like, okay, enough writing YAML or JSONet in this case. I want to join the DevX team. So to even solidify my position, I contributed to Backstage. It was like my first open source contribution as well. So that was nice. And I was like, hey, I was actually interviewing with the guy, Roy, who talked with the Spotify engineers. I was like, hey, I contributed to Backstage. I really want to join this team. And he was like, okay, come on. And then from there, 7 months ago, I've been working on Backstage in bold.com.
Lucky for us, and don't apologize. I hope you're feeling better, and thanks for joining us. So, like when you jumped on the project at the very first, did you notice some challenges, some gotchas that you would like to share with people who are on the same journey, like getting started with the project?
Because my experience with the Backstage was quite linear, right? Just testing some stuff out, first the scaffolding, then tech docs, and then a couple of things. I never actually encountered a lot of challenges. One thing I always do and recommend is just joining the Discord community, because you learn so much from there, like the threads, people asking questions, even you learn from the questions, and that's what I've been doing. And once you do that, I think you really get into a flow where you can deliver nice stuff.
Really good. Francisco asks, how many developers you currently have as part of the DevX team at bold.com?
Yeah, we are currently with 5 people, and then we also looking for an UX person who can actually design some cool stuff. As you know, that's one of the hardest stuff, but it's one of the most important actually, to have a developer experience that you also have nice user flow and user design. But yeah, with 5 engineers, 1 tech lead, and 1 UX designer.
Yeah, I recently heard that UX is eventually DevX, because if the software you design has user issues, then ultimately your customers will report to your developers that, hey, this is not working. So yeah, you're right. UX is important. Last question, and thanks for staying with us while you're ill. Is there anything that you'd like to see in Backstage in the short term that you feel like the project is missing?
Yeah, because I worked for a year in the insights team, right, with distributed tracing, did a lot with Prometheus tunnels and all that stuff. I'm very interested in telemetry, like metrics, what is exposed, how can we use it, and how can we like provide default alerts, right, for the Backstage instance integrated with Prometheus. I know there are some experimental metrics, but I hope in the next coming years we can streamline that to a production level.
Awesome. I hope you're reading chat. Tim is super amazed by your help that you contribute on Discord. I think a lot of people are grateful. So thank you. I hope you stick around and continue being part of the community. Yeah, let's stay in touch. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
So next up, we have Phil. Are you around, Phil?
Hey, I'm here.
Hey, I have made you co-host, so you should be able to share your screen. But tell us about the exciting thing you contributed to Scaffolder.
Sure. Let me share my screen here. Can you see? Wait, 1 second. Sorry, I need to change my security settings to allow Zoom to.
Indeed.
Oh, actually, I will need to rejoin the meeting because I need to reopen Zoom. I'll be right back.
Cool, no worries. Let's give Phil some time. Well, if you have questions for either Djamaile or about 1.0 or CNCF incubation or birthday, just put stuff into chat and then we'll discuss soon. Phil, you're back. Let me make you co-host again.
Hello?
Hey.
Okay, I'm back. Let me try again. Share screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. So just to give a quick background on the feature I recently contributed. So what it is a way to preview your scaffolder templates in Backstage to see what it'll look like when you render the form and UI and everything. And to give some context, I guess the old way that you would write and compose your scaffolder templates, you would put together a YAML file with the parameters and everything in order to configure what you want the UI form to look like. I found that to be a very frustrating process, because in order to actually see what it eventually looks like, you need to commit the change, have Backstage pick up your change, and then look at it Backstage in the scaffolder to see what the UI form looked like. Of course, the scaffolder relies on the React JSON schema form, and they do have a playground where you could try to set up your form and preview what it looks like. Still found this a little frustrating, because here you're required to write that in JSON, but for the scaffolder template, you would need to eventually convert that to YAML. So not a great experience. And another thing is, if you do have any custom field extensions, you wouldn't be able to play with them here. So that's why for my change, I figured we have something to render your YAML. Why not create something to just preview it? So I created a new view in the scaffolder. It's kind of hidden right now. So to get to it, you go to the preview subroute under create, which will take you to this view. And in here, there'll be a very basic editor, and also load in any existing scaffolder templates you might have in your Backstage instance. So you could pick and choose them and load them, and this will reflect what it will look like when it's rendered in the scaffolder. And then to allow you to actually play around and see how you want to change your scaffolder templates, you could edit the little editor here. It has very basic validation just to make sure it's correct YAML. And then once you make changes here, it'll be reflected instantly. So it gives you a much quicker process to validate and then play around with how you want to set up the form itself. And yeah, that's basically it. It is an open call for anyone who wants to help improve this. One thing I see this going forward is to be able to actually also load in a list of your custom field extensions to allow you to maybe select one of those and then automatically insert them here to also let you play around and configure those. Right now, if you are working on a template that's not already registered, you will need to copy and paste it into this little editor and just see what it looks like. One thing we could support in the future is any changes you make here. Maybe we could automatically open a pull request to the source location of that template if it exists, or create a new pull request to actually register your new scaffolder template to make a quick and easy process to both write and author your scaffolder templates and also commit it back to Backstage itself. And then, of course, as I said, this view here is a little hidden, similar to the actions view, which is this one for those who are not familiar with it, under the actions route. I would love to have some way to actually link back to this on the create page itself. So also open to ideas to where we want to put that navigation in, maybe a button here to take you to those edit views or documentation views. But that's pretty much it. I thought this would just really help speed up the process on actually writing these scaffolder templates. Any questions?
This is terrific. You can already see in chat that people at Box are using this, and then new people have found out about this that they're going to use. So thanks again for working on this. We have, of course, just the similar conversation about where the button should live so that you're able to find this. Yeah, you mentioned like maybe on the create page, you could have like live preview new form. So maybe that's a possibility.
Yep.
Cool. We have Anton. Any plan to support composition? Example, share common parameters across templates.
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, I think it's more of how you create software templates. So maybe.
Yeah, I can maybe.
Go ahead, Ben.
So I know that the library supports ref links, so you can, like Jason's game, you can define like these variables he's talking about, basically the shared blocks inside a JSON schema, and then reference them using refs. To be honest, we've not really thought much about it. I know it's supported by the library, but we haven't really thought about how we support it first class in the templates themselves, in the actual software templates. Maybe raise an issue for it, I think, and let's talk about it there. Maybe there might already be one knocking around somewhere I can try and find. But yeah, we haven't really thought about it so much, to be honest. Not yet.
Awesome, Ben. I'm reading discussions on if you create a pull request to change the software template, you could use maybe this to visualize this. I would imagine like a separate environment where every pull request creates a Backstage instance using Tugboat or those kind of live preview environment softwares. That's great. Do we have any other question in the chat? I think that's all. So if you have more questions for Phil, just drop in the chat and continue the conversation going. Thank you, Phil, for demoing, showing us an excellent feature, but also like telling us why you think it's important. So really appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for the time.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for joining. So next up, we have Julio. I've made you co-host. Are you around?
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, thanks for joining. And I hear you are going to demo a new, hey, good to see you.
Hey.
You're going to demo a new plugin that you created.
Yep, I will. Let me share. Yeah, let me share this really quick. Classic Zoom. Let's see. Can you see my screen? Can you give me like some feedback whether you can see that?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Nice, awesome. Thanks, Himanshu. So yeah, so today I'm going to talk about Periskop, which is a plugin we recently open sourced. My name is Julio. I work at SoundCloud in the platform team here. I guess like each company calls it a different thing: developer experience, developer happiness, engineering experience, platform, whatever. But that's it. One of the things that we work on is tools for engineers, of course, including Backstage, right? So we introduced Backstage at SoundCloud. We adopted it like more or less a year ago, replacing our existing service catalog, and we're really happy with it. And instead, in fact, we're like increasing the functionality. So Periskop is like part of that story. Let's see if the slides work. Yes. So yeah, again, that's me, staff engineer at SoundCloud. You can reach out to me directly on Twitter on this handle. So errors, and what is Periskop about, right? You all heard of like the observability triad, metrics, tracing, and logging. At SoundCloud we have a very mature story around observability, especially with regards to metrics. You probably know Prometheus was a project started at SoundCloud years ago, and we released in open source and shared with the community, and now it grew bigger even than SoundCloud's engineering team. We have people contributing to Prometheus all over the industry, which is great. And then for traces, we use another tool. Internally, we use Zipkin. There is already a solution for that. And for logging, there are many also in the market. But one of the things that we missed was looking at errors. And by errors, I mean exceptions overall. The story at SoundCloud was that we used a third-party service that we shipped our exceptions to. but it gets to a point where our load was too big, that we were overloading our exceptions, my error monitoring tool. So we started to think, well, what can we do here? Our quota, we're hitting the quota all the time, and we caused even an outage on their servers. So we had this like 20% time thing. A group of engineers got together to build what could be like a evolution of error monitoring at SoundCloud, and we took a lot of inspiration from Prometheus, right? Prometheus being a pull-based system versus a push-based system in which you send your exceptions to. We thought we're going to build something that actually can pull instead, and that's what Periskop is. So the way it works, if you haven't seen it yet, you haven't heard of it yet, it's like, as I mentioned, right? Like there's a server that exposes the exceptions in an endpoint, and then it basically like pulls these exceptions from the instances that are running in production, exposes that in that endpoint, and then we have a UI, the Periskop UI that just renders that, right? With that, that means we have a client library that aggregates and samples these errors in memory, and the client libraries are basically like built for each, depending on the language, the programming language you pick. We have a different client library, and then the server will scrape that in a recurring interval and aggregate these errors across all the instances. So we prepared this. We of course started trying it within SoundCloud. We instrumented many of our services with it, and Periskop became the de facto way to do error monitoring at SoundCloud. And I think 2 years ago we have been using it really heavily. And I think similarly to the Backstage story, we open sourced it at some points to pay back to the community and also to contribute and receive contributions as well. So some of the features that we have were built by us at SoundCloud internally. Some features were built by engineers that already left SoundCloud and keep maintaining it. And some of the features are contributed by engineers even outside of SoundCloud, which is really cool. It's like, just like Backstage, open source model for the win. So here are some examples of features that we have on Periskop, and this is even before we talk about Backstage. As an example here, like looking at services and how error gets aggregated, the occurrences of the errors, you can see all of them aggregated there in a single UI. You can search and filter by less occurrence, maybe by severity as well. You can also mark errors as resolved. So for instance, something that is noisy, or maybe an error that you already you're in the process of deploying a fix for, you can mark them as resolved as well. And as I mentioned, since we open sourced the main project, which is Go, written in Go, we have also open sourced other client libraries in different languages. So here are the ones we currently have in Go, Scala, Python, and Ruby, that you can integrate your service and then start to integrate with Periskop for scraping. So it's interesting because, for instance, the Go library, we instrument Periskop itself with the Go client library. So Periskop actually scrapes itself in the same, the same idea as like Prometheus servers do. And then for Ruby, we have a rack middleware that we use in our Rails monolith, for example. So that also allows us to see exceptions aggregated in, our big old monolith that we have since forever at SoundCloud. I'm not going to go super into detail of what else Periskop is and what provides, the full motivation, also like the problems that we solved and the issues that we are still seeing, the future plans. There's a full talk about it. Two of our core contributors presented in FOSDEM earlier this year. So here's the link if you're curious for the full story on Periskop and also the feature and the vision we have for it. One of the things, of course, that is on the vision for Periskop is better integration with other projects in open source. And that's where comes the Backstage plugin, right? That's the motivation here. Because Periskop became another tool in our toolbox at SoundCloud. So we thought, this is the perfect opportunity actually to contribute something back to the Periskop open source project, while also providing value for the engineers at SoundCloud, bringing things, this information into the glass, the single pane of glass pane. That's Backstage is. Oh, I messed up the marketing sentence there, Himanshu. Anyhow, so the Periskop plugin was open source. I was really happy to be able to contribute and work together with the engineers and the Backstage core maintainers. So here's like a sneak peek of how it looks. As you would expect, right? Like the table of errors there, and then you can filter by severity, by occurrence, number of occurrences, which service it happened, where it happened, the errors, and so on and so forth. An interesting feature here that was important for us in the beginning. Whoops. Here's an example of the annotation, right, to match the service name. So it ends up in the catalog entity page for each specific service. So here in this example, we're looking into like the tracks entity in the catalog, and then you have the errors aggregated for that specific service. But the feature I wanted to raise awareness to is the support for availability zones and federation as well. So at SoundCloud, we deploy our microservices in multiple zones, basically for redundancy, and also to decrease latencies and put this code close to the users. And we also aggregate errors across these different zones, right? So Backstage here was very interesting for us because it provided like one extra feature on top of what we already had of the deployments of Periskop, becoming this one single UI through all of our deployments of the Periskop servers, right? So you have a single place in the entity page, for example, in this case, in the track service. And with a drop down, you can see errors in Europe, in the US, in South America, in Asia. And of course, we expose this again through the Backstage REST API through the proxy. So that allows for further automation and aggregation across zones, which is really cool. So yeah, this is that's the plugin is open source. It's on the Backstage repo. Of course, you're also most welcome to contribute to Periskop itself and any of the client libraries. If you have a language that you use in your company or your org that doesn't have a client library, we are also accepting PRs. That would be really amazing to see. Or if you want to contribute to Periskop, like the server and the aggregation tool as well, you have all the information here on this URL on the screen. Yeah, and that's it. So thanks for the time. Thanks for listening to me, and enjoy. Use the Periskop plugin. If you have questions or you want to just hang out, I'm on Discord. You can also reach out to me on Twitter with my handle or via GitHub as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio, and thanks for working on this project as well as its counterpart Backstage plugin. If you have some time, I would like to talk a bit about your experience while working on this plugin, especially if you're up for it. Just a quick one. Were there things that you would have found useful when you were creating this plugin? Like, let's talk about like the front end part of this plugin, or maybe the back end part of it. Were there things that were challenging and could have been avoided? Anything that you'd like to share with someone who might be creating a plugin for Backstage?
Yeah, for sure. So my experience, this is not the first plugin I contribute to the open source repository, right? Before that, I contributed, like we in SoundCloud use GoCD as a CI/CD engine. And that's the one I started like getting my hands dirty with. And if anything, that's a tip for a new starter is take something smaller. Maybe a plugin, in the case of the GoCD one, is only front end, right? There's no backend component to it. So with that, I'm also not like a web engineer. I have never done like production TypeScript or React before. So that was also a good way to get my hands dirty with Material UI, the tooling, TypeScript overall, and also, the Backstage project per se. So I think, that's a good start. And then for the Periskop one, I think as you saw, right, like the UI we have there is pretty much bare bones. It's like what Material UI provides. There's nothing amazing or super different about it. This is, of course, we have ideas for the future, but this was also a big plus for us, and also a big plus, especially as an individual contributor, for me to be able to advocate with my team, hey, I'm going to put some time in rebuilding some of the UI that Periskop already provides, because there are extra features we're going to get out of it. There are extra benefits we're going to get out of it. So having, for that instance, like the storybook setup, like example of other plugins, how they use, how you translate UI into code was super helpful as well, for writing the plugin.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Hope to see you around, and let's catch up next time. Bye. All right. And we are at the last demo of this session. Last but not least, we have Charles from the Frontside team. Are you around, Charles?
Yes, I'm right here.
Hey, I have made you co-host and take it away.
All right, fantastic. In that case, I'll share my screen. It's some really cool demos before this one. So those are some big footsteps to follow, but we'll do our best. First of all, can everybody see my screen?
Yep. Yes.
So what we wanted to do is we were working on a project that had some pretty complicated ingestion. There was a lot of providers and processors, and everything had to work in concert, and they were breaking a lot. And so we wanted to wrap a test suite around it that would be reasonably fast, that would be very, very reliable, and that also would be really, really resilient to change, so that we could change how things worked internally, but fundamentally we wanted to just test the inputs and outputs. And so we said, well, what can we do if we wanted to make a test suite where we just, for every single test case, we started a fresh instance of Backstage, like the whole server, with a fresh database. We won't be showing this today, but in other cases, like with a fresh search index, and then set up some inputs, and then wait a while for the ingestion to settle, and then make assertions. And this is what I'm showing here is a stripped down version of that, of what we eventually settled on. And so what we have here is, the other thing that we really, really wanted the test suite to the property that we wanted it to have was that it was going to tell you exactly what it was doing. And so really it's just as simple as, so this is the application that you get with just the Create app, the Backstage Create app. And we took this harness and applied it to some of the entities that are just there kind of in the demo setup. So here, before each test case, we're going to create an entire Backstage server. And then what that is going to do is it's going to return us a reference to the catalog API. And so what we're doing then is we're only testing, so the only interaction that our test suite has with Backstage is at the operating system process to start it and stop it, and then over HTTP. And so for that reason, it doesn't, we don't have any internal bindings to any internal classes. And so what we do is we create the Backstage server, and then we check, can we connect to the catalog API? And then you see this construct, which is, it eventually, and that's a custom jest extension that we wrote. And what that does is it just runs the assertion again and again and again until it either becomes true or it times out. And that lets us have really, really reliable tests, because we don't have to, if the ingestion takes 10 milliseconds, hey, our test takes 10 milliseconds. If it takes 2 seconds, then it's going to take 2 seconds. And so the only bottleneck on how fast a test can run is how fast the actual ingestion can run. And there's no internal synchronization mechanism that we have to do. So anyway, enough talk. That's too much talk. Here we can see the test suite running here. So there's the 3 tests that I showed you. They take the Backstage server takes about 5 seconds to start up. Now part of it's a little bit slower because I'm running Zoom, and then the individual tests take about 6 seconds to run. So that means the ingestion runs in about 2 seconds until we make the assertions. And there's some optimizations to make these run faster that we can talk about later. But you can see I can run the test. and those will run. And then I want to, like, each one of those 3 tests is getting its own Backstage server, completely and totally fresh. And then you can see those pass. And then if I want to be hacking on my code, or I want to, you know, I want to add, I want to add some other, XYZ. I want to add some other tag that's, I don't want to, that isn't actually there, just so that we can see it failing. Here, you're gonna probably have to run those again. Sometimes Jest doesn't quite, it starts rerunning the test suite, but doesn't pick it up in time. But as we run the test suite, sorry, we can see that it's, we're gonna get the actual failure there, and the diff of what the entity looked like and what we expected it to look like. And that's it. So I guess I can pause for questions.
Awesome. Well, lots of questions, but you explained what it eventually is. So that was really great. I'm curious about the create Backstage server thing. And could you expand on how that is happening? Is it like running create app, or is it already deployed something? What's happening there?
So what's happening is, so there's definitely a little bit of hand waving here. But this is using a structured concurrency library to actually interact with the operating system process. So we can actually look at the implementation here, and you can see we're actually, this is where what we're doing is we're creating a server resource. Now, this, like I said, this uses a structured concurrency library called Affection. So there is it depends on this, and so this code may look a little bit foreign. This is what's called a resource. But here's essentially where you can see we're starting a daemon here, and so we're just running the start backend script. So remember at the beginning, I was saying the only interaction we actually have with Backstage is at, you know, the operating system process level. We start it, and then the HTTP level. So this is where we actually start it. And we have to do a couple of things because there's some booby traps in the Backstage code. If it detects this Jest worker ID, then it actually shaves off some functionality. So we have to take that environment variable out of the environment, and then we pass it you can basically pass configuration overrides, and so we'll get to that. But then what we do is we actually spawn 2 processes to read the standard out and standard error, so that if something does go wrong and you need to have a look at what happens, you can see here there inside the test package there's the logs. And so here is, for example, the output log for that test case. And so each test case you can see has logs for standard out and standard error, so that, you know, when in the case where something goes wrong, you can really track it down really quickly. And then for so you can see, let's see what's the other thing that we do. We also, if we look here, we take this configuration, and this actually this is a override of the configuration for just the test case. So you can see it's going to use everything that's an app config, but we're going to override with these things. So instead of working on the default port 7000, it's going to start and stop it on port 8800. And then of course this is really important because we're going to provide a prefix for the test database. So you can see at the beginning of this create stat Backstage operation, we're going to clear all of the databases that start with this prefix here. So so if we look at Postico here, and I'll make this, wait, oops. Why can I not interact with that window? No. Okay. Huh. It doesn't want to let me grab that window.
It's got to be Zoom and some groups.
Yeah. Huh. Let's see. Let's see. I don't think I have. No, it's. I probably create a new connection. Tell you what. Let me. Is there? This is actually a different. Here we go. No.
Yeah, I got to go back to the
Postgres. No.
That HPDev. What is that? That's a different database.
This is a different database.
Right.
So
oh no, there's ingestion test right there. The ingestion test tables. The ingestion test tables.
Yeah, integration test. Yeah, here it is. So yeah, so you can see here are all the tables, and we're just actually dropping all of those tables at the beginning of the test. And this is actually something that was really cool with Backstage, is that it can actually attach and migrate itself on any database. So that part of it was really, really easy. All we had to do to clear out the databases, was just run, basically drop every database that's like the prefix, and Backstage takes care of migrating itself.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah. So does that there's a lot under the hood there, but it's all to make it very, very simple. So that you can just you have an operation anywhere inside your test case, you can create your Backstage server. And the nice thing about using the structured concurrency is that you'll notice that there's no teardown of the Backstage server. It's automatically tied to the lifetime of the test. So it doesn't matter if the test succeeds, the server gets shut down. If the test fails, the server gets shut down. If the test times out, the server gets shut down. Like, no matter what, if the process exits, the server gets shut down. And so that, let's make sure that port is clean, so that, the next time you run the test cases, or if you restart the test cases, because a file changed, it's going to shut down the currently running server and then restart again.
And so one of the patterns is this kind of black box testing idea with ingestion testing is you're asserting on what's coming out from the API catalog. So we're querying the API catalog to see what data we actually get. But the other side of it is that's the consumption side. Like, you're talking to the catalog API to get the result. But if you wanted to configure what happens to the input, right? So like when the ingestion needs to connect to a service, what you could do here is you would then do setup of your mock server, so that you could say, if I'm connected to an external API, the external API is going to give me the following result, so that when your ingestion runs, it will when it responds to that endpoint, then given the specific data is added, it will get processed through your ingestion pipeline, and then you will be asserting on what's coming out in the actual API. So it's a very like kind of black box testing for the ingestion pipeline. So you get to test everything that is how all of the kind of ingesters kind of compound on each other, how they compose into each other.
Really cool. I think this is a good idea for people who would like to test their own Backstage instance and catalog and how their ingestions are working or not. So thanks for sharing. If you have like blog posts and such, feel free to drop them in the chat. And if anyone has any question about this or anything in general, you've got time and people. I do notice that there's a Backstage NPM scope, and I wonder if this is supposed to be open source or about to be open source, or Is that just, is it already? I don't know about.
It's already open source. I think it's just a matter of figuring out. So I think what could follow this would be an RFC for ingestion testing. And I think that'd be a good place to kind of flash out what what would take, because this stuff is already, all of this is already available on the internet. So I think as a POC, this is a kind of really good starting point of already using this. So it's just a matter of figuring out, if we want to introduce to the backend or to the core, well, what does that look like? What do we need to do?
Awesome, thanks. I didn't know about that. Cool. So thank you, Charles, for the awesome demo. It's amazing to see Emacs on a live share screen, and kudos on doing that perfectly. Thank you, Taras, for sharing, and see you around.
All right, thank you.
All right, so we are at the very end. And if you have any last minute questions on all the amazing demos, or 1.0 or 2-year anniversary, or anything in general, please drop them in the chat. I do have a couple of call to actions. You can nominate yourself and others for the contributor spotlight here, and we'll make sure they are spotlighted, and we will talk to them publicly. Please check out 1.0 blog post and see what this means for you and for the project.